This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Now the recording of the previous classes, I think some have expired. I'll reset the dates. I think few of you have requested for the videos, older videos. I'll reset it. Just give me 1 or 2 days time. I'll go to the setting. I'll reset. I'll refresh the link so that you can access it. Now, were you able to see the apical impulse video I gave as a resource for today's class? Apical impulse. It was not clear earlier, so okay. So that apical impulse is actually in a patient with mitral regurgitation. Okay, so that's a very classical hyperdynamic apical impulse. Okay. Now, were you able to appreciate the pulsation in more than one intercostal space? In that video, were you able to appreciate? Okay. So in that video, actually, there will be pulsation in 3 places: left 6th space, left 5th space, as well as epigastric region. So it's a very nice video showing pulsations over the precordium. Okay. So today we'll be taking up signs of aortic stenosis and aortic regurgitation. So that will be the discussion today. Which you feel is relatively easier, cardiovascular system or respiratory system? You feel RS was more easier. Okay, maybe when you start examining, you will feel that cardiovascular system is easier than respiratory system. Diagnosing respiratory system is quite challenging because, as I told, but maybe understanding wise, you feel respiratory system is better. Okay. So now we'll take up aortic stenosis and aortic regurgitation today. So I'll just show you what has to be seen in the inspection. Okay. So what will be the finding when you inspect a patient with aortic stenosis? You can just give what you feel, then I'll go back to the sequence of events which happens in aortic stenosis. What will be the inspectory findings in aortic stenosis? For revision's sake, you can just tell only about the apical impulse, pulsations. That's the main 2 things we see in the examination of cardiovascular system. Harini has put apical impulses displaced. Displaced means what? You have to be precise. Is it displaced downward or lateral? Okay, Roshni feels it is shifted laterally. Okay, shifted laterally. See, those of you who are mentioned shifted laterally, why do you think it is shifted laterally? Why do you think it is shifted laterally? Smriti has mentioned left ventricular dilatation, left ventricular hypertrophy. Due to left ventricular hypertrophy. Okay. Okay. So one is apical impulse is shifted. Fine. Any pulsations you will be able to see now the precordium? Any pulsations you will be able to see over the precordium? Smriti has mentioned epigastric and left parasternal pulsation. Why is there an epigastric pulsation? Smriti, why you think there is a pulsation in the epigastric region? And why you think there is a pulsation in the left parasternal region? Okay, fine. Both from left ventricular hypertrophy. Okay. Anyway, I'll just give the sequence. when does the aortic stenosis, narrowing of the aortic valve, naturally occurs as you age? The valve size of the aortic valve size at 60 years in a healthy individual is not the same as one at 20 years. So the valve decreases in size above 50 years, because it is a degenerative process. But it does not cause any symptom. Why? I've given you an explanation. Aortic valve narrows in its size as the age increases, especially after 50. So why does not it cause symptom? Now think. Don't be in a hurry to give the answer. Roshni has mentioned more than 75% narrowing only causes symptom. Very good. So the valve has to become very narrow, around 1 centimeter or 0.7 centimeter, for it to really cause symptom, because left ventricle usually compensates for any amount of narrowing in healthy individuals. Okay. So that is why only a severe degeneration of the aortic valve will cause aortic stenosis. So what will be the first hemodynamic change or structural change which happens when aorta gets narrowed? When aorta becomes critically narrow, like 1 centimeter, what is the first response which occurs? Okay, Smriti has mentioned pulse volume drops. Very good. So the volume of the pulse decreases. What happens to the BP? What happens to the BP? The systolic BP decreases. Okay, because there is delayed ejection of the stroke volume. Therefore, the systolic BP will go down and the pulse pressure also will narrow. Okay, and this will be followed by left ventricular hypertrophy. Okay, now what did we see in mitral regurgitation? When left ventricular pressure increases, what was the consequence? What did it lead on to? Left ventricular increase in the left ventricular pressure, what did it lead on to? Backward. In the backward direction, what did it lead on to? Increase in the left atrial pressure. Very good. Okay. And symptom wise dyspnea. I am asking about the signs. Okay. But in aortic stenosis, you have to understand left atrial enlargement is not common. Okay. Left atrial enlargement is not common because by the time the patient developed left ventricular hypertrophy due to severe aortic stenosis, he would have reached a point where immediate intervention is required. Okay. Otherwise, it can lead on to death. So why is this aortic degeneration or aortic valve apparatus, when it gets diseased, it leads on to death very quickly? What is the reason? Why does aortic stenotic patient have a high degree of mortality once they become symptomatic? Cerebral hypoxia is one answer I've got. Major source of blood supply. Haridev, can you refine your answer? You mentioned decreased blood supply to heart. I think you are close to the answer, but it's not clear. Haridev. Okay, coronary supply, very good. See, aortic stenosis, what you have to understand is that you have the proximal aorta, isn't it? You have the proximal aorta. So when there is narrowing, what will happen to the jet of the blood? That will also become narrow. Okay. So let's assume this is the aorta. This is the arch of the aorta. I'm just showing you the arch of the aorta. So let's assume this is the beginning. So when the jet is hit, what happens? A thin jet hits at a distal part of the arch. So the arch is there, and there is a pressure at the beginning of the arch. So what happens? A thin jet of blood hits at the turning point of the aortic arch. Okay. So the amount of blood which comes back and fills the coronary artery becomes less. Okay, so that is why aortic stenotic patient develop chest pain. There is secondary fall in the coronary blood supply, therefore they develop chest pain. Another issue they face is the aortic valve, when it undergoes degeneration, it leads on to formation of calcium deposits. Calcification occurs. This calcification is also extends into the coronary arteries, and there also the calcification will block the coronary supply. So one important reason why these people die early is coronary artery gets affected, coronary perfusion gets affected, therefore they do not live long to develop left atrial dilatation or development of pulmonary hypertension. Okay, so aortic stenosis is most commonly an isolated left ventricular disease because they don't survive till they develop right ventricular problem. Okay, is the sequence I told clear? Did you understand the dynamics of aortic stenosis? Okay. So now what will be the apical impulse will be shifted. So as you told, since it is hypertrophy, it gets shifted laterally, or sometimes it can just shift downwards also. There is no rule that left ventricular impulse only should go laterally. It can go laterally or downward, but most textbooks have given it as laterally. I would tell it is just displaced outward or downward. Okay. Now, subsequently, what happens? Since I told there is no left atrial enlargement, there is no increase in the pulmonary artery pressure, there will not be any kind of a precordial pulsations. Okay, so the precordium will be usually very quiet in aortic stenosis. Okay, so that is the inspectory finding in aortic stenosis. Now going to the palpatory finding. So you can try it. When you palpate in aortic stenosis, what is the finding you will have? Palpation. I have given you the checklist. Aortic stenosis palpation. What is the sign it causes? You put the full thing. So many of you have put only heaving effect. Don't be in a hurry. Just think over and put the full palpatory find. Complete palpatory finding. I'm not getting the answer. Full palpatory find. Okay. Sana has asked, repeat why precordial pulsation are not seen. See, precordial pulsations are seen only when there is a right ventricle. See, precordium predominantly it is driven by the right ventricle. Remember that. So only when the right ventricular hypertrophies or there is turbulent flow into the right ventricle, precordial pulsation is there. Okay, as far as the parasternal pulsation is there. When there is increased flow through the pulmonary valve or when there is increased flow through the aortic valve, then you will have pulsations in the aortic area and the pulmonary area. As I told you, aortic stenosis, it does not even lead on to left atrial enlargement. Before that, the patient does not survive. Patient mortality is very high. If it is symptomatic aortic stenosis is not correct. They don't survive beyond 6 months to 1 year. So that is why they do not develop precordial pulsation. So I'll just go through some of the answers you have given. Haridev has given heaving apical impulse, thrill in the right second intercostal space, no parasternal heave. No parasternal heave. Okay. Chandani has mentioned trachea and midline, apex be displaced outward and downward. Heaving in character, no parasternal heave, no palpable sounds, thrill in aortic. Okay. See now, before I go into the palpatory finding, when the aortic valve undergoes degeneration, okay, what will happen to the sound it produces due to closure? What happens to the sound which occurs? It is degenerated. Degenerated means it is okay. Some are put increased, some are put muffled. Okay, most of you have put muffled. Okay, so it will be soft. It will be muffled or it will be absent. Okay. So when you palpate, as I told you, you will have a heaving apex. Let me just explain how a heaving apex will feel like. So heaving apex is, you can define it as a apical impulse in which the palpating finger perceives a sustained lift. Okay, so when you feel and you get a apical impulse felt here, then you take a finger and keep it over that place and press it. So let's assume this is the place apex. I'm keeping the finger like this, so it will lift like this. Okay, so the finger will sustained lift will be felt. So you will be feel a sustained lift. So this is the heart wall. This is the finger. Okay, so you will get a sustained lift. That is called a heaving apex. Okay. Now it will be displaced. That already we have found out. So when you palpate the other areas, since the sound is not, since the valve is not closing very harshly, you will not be able to feel any palpable events in the tricuspid region or in the aortic region, except for a thrill. So you will feel a thrill. A systolic thrill may be felt usually in the right second intercostal space. Okay, right second intercostal space, which corresponds to the direction of the aortic jet, which is also we called as aortic area. There you will be able to feel the thrill. Okay. Now this thrill may be extended even to the carotid artery. So we call it as a carotid thrill. So this thrill may also go into the carotid artery. We call it as a carotid thrill. Okay. So only this you will get in palpation. So heaving apex and a thrill in the aortic region. Okay. So now going to the auscultation. So what will be the finding you will have in severe aortic stenosis? You think over and you put it, try to describe the murmur also. Try to describe a murmur which you get in severe aortic stenosis. Now complete description. Roshni has put ESM. You have to tell about the sounds in different area. You have to tell about the murmur with a full description. I think we know how to do it based on the discussions we had in mitral stenosis and mitral regurgitation. Try to attempt a complete description of murmur. Sarthak has given S1 is normal, S2 soft, reverse split, S3 heard, S4 heard. Anybody else? Harini has mentioned S1 is normal, S2 soft, reverse splitting, S3 can be heard, mid systolic murmur. Sanjana, high and low pitched ejection systolic murmur, late systolic peaking. Okay. Many of you have mentioned this reverse splitting. How will you know whether it is normal A2 P2 or P2 followed by A2? How will you know whether it is P2 is followed by A2 or A2 is followed by P2? Since you have put reverse splitting, I am just asking that question. Any answers for reverse splitting? Okay. See, try to look at the common things first. Many things. The problem between what you read in textbooks and what you see in patients will be very much different. So try to concentrate on things which you need to really concentrate more when you auscultate. So when you auscultate the apex, and okay, let me put it the other way. When you feel a thrill in the right second space and there is a heaving apex, where will you start your auscultation? I've given you the example. Heaving apex is there and there is a thrill in the aortic area. Where will you start the auscultation? Most of you have given it as apex. Chitra Behra, she has mentioned aortic area. And most of the others have mentioned apex. Now Behra, why you feel it's aortic area? Chitrita Behra has mentioned its aortic area. Why you have mentioned its aortic area? Why you think you should auscultate from the aortic area? Okay. See, generally, if you feel a thrill in a particular area, you better auscultate from that area. Why? So when there is a thrill in a particular area, you auscultate first in the area where you had felt the thrill. Why is that? You can start from the apex also, but I am just telling you a practical way to approach auscultation when a thrill is felt. What is the advantage of auscultating from the aortic area? For example, I have given you thrill is there. Okay, one is murmur will be better appreciated. Is there any other better advantage? Is there any better advantage? One, okay, thrill is there. Intensity is, it's well heard there. I agree. Any other bigger advantage of starting from the place where thrill is present? Thrill signifies palpable. No, thrill signifies palpable murmur. Smriti, you have mentioned thrill signifies palpable heart sound. Thrill signifies palpable murmur. Okay. Yeah, I agree. Anything, any other bigger advantage? Any other bigger advantage? Okay. Any other bigger advantage of starting? Not to miss auscultation of other valves which may also be involved. No, I still have not got the answer. Radiation, no. Blood flow is antegrade. To understand the timing and conduction defect. Something more basic. Something more basic. Localize the lesion, I agreed. Any bigger advantage? Okay. I'll give the answer. Murmurs which are of high grade pansystolic murmur, high grade ejection systolic murmur, okay, can sometimes be conducted to other parts also. it's very relevant for aortic stenosis because there is a principle based on Bernoulli's theorem. You remember Bernoulli's theorem? I'm not going into Bernoulli's theorem, don't worry. I just want to know whether you remember something like Bernoulli's theorem. Fluid mechanics, very good. Okay. Now, based on that particular theorem, and specifically in aortic stenosis, the murmur of aortic stenosis can be conducted to the apex. Okay, murmur of aortic stenosis can be conducted to the apex. So if I start from the apex, I may confuse that the murmur is originating at the apex, and I may feel that two murmurs are heard, one at the mitral area, one at the aortic area. Okay, but if I auscultate the aortic area first, and unfortunately the aortic murmur of aortic stenosis can be conducted all over the chest also. It will be heard in the pulmonary region, it can be heard in the apex, it can be heard in the left lower sternal edge, it can be heard all over the chest. In that case, you can compare the murmur intensity. You can look at the murmur behavior. Does the murmur pattern, how it is behaving after the S1, before S2? The auscultogram of the murmur, is it same as that of aortic area? So if I feel that aortic murmur is of maximum intensity, it is also heard in the other areas of the heart, but it looks like the same murmur which is conducted. Okay, so in general, in cardiology, of course, many books have advised to start from the apex, I agree. But a practical way is to start from the place where the thrill is there, but follow a pattern. Either follow a clockwise pattern or anti-clockwise pattern. So you can start from aorta, pulmonary region, apex, tricuspid region, or aortic region, tricuspid region, apex, and pulmonary region. So clockwise or anti-clockwise, but preferable to start from the place where there is a thrill. Okay. What happens to the sound? Nobody have actually mentioned about the sound in auscultation. Most of you have given only the okay. So which sound will be muffled? Haridev has mentioned muffled. Which sound will be muffled? Which sound will be muffled? Okay. A2 will be muffled. Don't bother much about. See, second sound is best studied in the pulmonary region and the aortic region. That is the right second space and the left second space. So if you want to study the pulmonary sound, you will auscultate the left second space. If you want to study the aortic sound, you will study the right second space. Okay, so remember that. So A2 or P2, that is what we look at. So A2 will be muffled. Okay. Now I'll just take you through the findings. Quickly, I'll take you through the signs of aortic stenosis. Okay. So now quickly I run through the signs. Already we have discussed this. I've given you the answers also. Let me just take you through the signs of aortic stenosis. So this diagram gives you an idea about the valve area. Normal valve area is 2.5 to 3.5 centimeters square. Critical aortic stenosis less than 0.7 centimeter. Okay. So you can see the normal heart and the stenotic heart. You can see that it is a thick wall. Okay. And the valve is quite narrow. So dynamics I have already told you. Right. So pulse, it will be low volume and slow rising. Okay. Now, which pulse you will study to analyze the low volume and slow rising pulse? Radial artery, brachial artery, or carotid, femoral, dorsalis pedis. Which artery you will choose to study the low volume pulse? Low volume pulse, which is slow rising. See, think before you put the answer. Most of you have put radial. Okay, fine. See, remember, to study the character of the pulse, most of the time we use a carotid, and especially when you study the volume, it is the carotid. The problem here is that the volume is low. Volume is already low. So when you palpate the radial, will you able to appreciate the character? Volume is already low. So by the time the blood reaches the radial artery, the volume is going to be very small. So you will choose the carotid. Okay, so carotid artery is the artery which you will prefer to study the low volume, slow rising pulse of aortic stenosis. Actually, as an undergraduate, it may be difficult to appreciate the slow rising, but you should be able to appreciate the low volume carotid pulse, which is very important in the diagnosis. And BP, the systolic BP goes down. So we call it as systolic decapitation. Okay, the systolic BP actually goes down. In severe aortic stenosis, many times it will be less than 100. It will be something like 90 and all. Okay. So pulse pressure will be narrow. So it will be like 90 by 70. So the pulse pressure is only 20. JVP will not be elevated. Already I have given you the explanation for that. It doesn't lead on to right heart failure because patients do not survive that long. So JVP is not elevated. And you may have some rare classical signs in JVP, which is not required at an undergraduate level. Okay. Now, apical impulse is shifted down or it can be shifted out. It's variable. So it is either shifted down or it is shifted out, not down and out, because apical impulse shifting down and out indicates dilatation. So it can be shifted down or it can be shifted laterally depending on how the hypertrophy occurs. And as we already told, no pulsations will be there, no parasternal heave will be there, apex will be heaving, and you will get a systolic thrill in the aortic area. Okay. Now this gives you the murmur in aortic stenosis. Okay. Now you can see here, this is mild aortic stenosis. You are hearing only the murmur. It is crescendo decrescendo murmur. It is going up and it is coming down. So it is a crescendo decrescendo murmur. As the severity increasing, are you able to appreciate that the S2 is getting delayed and it is getting smaller? So don't bother about the splitting, reverse splitting. It may be very difficult at your level. So let's bother only about the intensity of S2. So S2 is normal here, muffled here, and maybe absent in this thing. Okay. So main thing what you need to concentrate on the auscultation is the ejection systolic murmur. Ejection systolic murmur. So it will typical ejection character will be having. Commonest place where you get an ejection pattern is high flow states like anemia. Okay, anemia, what you hear, anemia is an ejection systolic murmur. Similar murmur will be heard and the A2 will be muffled or absent. Okay, so just concentrate on these two patterns alone and don't bother much about the time when it is peaking. So theoretically they tell late peaking. Late peaking is because as the valve narrows, left ventricular will take longer time to eject. So the ejection gets delayed and therefore it is late peaking, and S4 is due to decrease in the compliance of the left ventricle. Okay. Smriti has asked auscultogram why the murmur encroaching into S2. No, actually the murmur is ending at S2. It is ending at S2. It's not crossing S2. If you carefully see the diagram, it is ending at S2. S2 means A2. What they mean is A2. The red line is A2. Okay. So is it clear the inspection, palpation and auscultatory finding in aortic stenosis? Inspection, palpation and auscultation finding in aortic stenosis? Okay. Fine. Now I'll give you one scenario. Why does it have a crescendo decrescendo? See, crescendo decrescendo is because it is a ejection from the left ventricle. Okay, left ventricle keeps on contracting. So the pressure in the left ventricle increases. The peak is the point where the valve opens little bit. So then the blood flows freely and therefore the decrescendo. The crescendo decrescendo is because of the work done by the left ventricle before the valve is open. So the crescendo correlates to the work done by the left ventricle. Once that extent of work is done, then the blood flows, therefore the murmur intensity comes down. Chandani, is it clear? Okay. Now I'll give you one scenario. When aortic stenosis is complicated by left ventricular failure. When aortic stenosis is complicated by left ventricular failure, what will happen to the signs? What will happen to the signs? Like heaving apex, thrill in the aortic area, murmur. Roshni has mentioned it is decreased. Any other answers? Okay. See, remember, aortic stenosis, people do not survive enough to develop heart failure. Okay, but some people do come with heart failure because they may not have the facility to undergo this surgery. So they will just present with features of heart failure. At the time when you palpate or auscultate, you may not hear any murmur at all. You may not hear any murmur at all. You may not be able to appreciate the heaving apex, but those patients will usually come with a shock. They will come with a hypotension because the valve is so narrowed and patient has gone in for heart failure. Okay, so remember this. So in a patient with heart failure, if you do not appreciate the ejection systolic murmur, it does not mean that the patient is having a normal valve. In severe aortic stenosis, signs of aortic stenosis may disappear. Okay, so this point you have to remember. Okay, so now we'll move on to the next valve, valvular lesion, which is aortic regurgitation. So in aortic regurgitation, what are the inspectory findings? Aortic regurgitation, what are the inspectory findings? You tell a proper list of inspectory findings. Aortic regurgitation, what will be the inspectory findings? You can start with pulse also. You can start with pulse, BP, general examination. What will happen to the pulse, BP, and the inspection? I'll wait for 1 minute, then I'll go through your answers. So Smriti has put as apical impulse displays outward and laterally, visible suprasternal pulsations, apex down and out. Roshni has given apex down and out, pulsation in the pulmonary area, prominent carotid pulse. Good. Haridev has put high volume pulse, BP increased, apical impulse shifted down. Okay. I'll read out only those which complete description is given. Chandani has mentioned high volume collapsing, dancing carotid, white pulse pressure. Anusya, shape of the chest normal, symmetry is normal, apical impulse displays outward and laterally, visible pulsation in the parasternal area, normal tracheal position. Okay. Anyway, we'll go to the discussion of inspectory finding. So before I go to the inspectory finding, aortic regurgitation is a well compensated state. You have to understand that first. Okay. Patients live with moderate aortic regurgitation and even severe aortic regurgitation for years together. Healthy individuals, they live for a very long time until unless it follows aortic stenosis. Okay, so the left ventricle has the capability to accept large regurgitation back into the ventricle, and it keeps on pumping it back into the aorta without going in for failure. Okay, this is one thing you have to understand. So, like what I told in aortic stenosis, it is a well compensated state. So what happens? Left ventricular tolerates the increase in the end diastolic volume for a very long time without transmitting to the left atrium, which means that left atrial enlargement in a patient with severe aortic regurgitation takes a very, very long time to occur. Is this point clear? Aortic regurgitation is a well compensated state, and the left ventricle has the capability to handle the regurgitant volume without transmitting to the left atrium for a very, very long time. Okay, so which means that most patients with aortic regurgitation will come to you with signs of dilated left ventricle and signs of increased cardiac output. Okay, increased cardiac output in the sense that a large volume of blood being ejected again and again into the aorta. Okay, so in other words, a sort of a hyperdynamic, grossly hyperdynamic state, which can be more hyperdynamic than what you see in anemia or thyrotoxicosis or pregnancy. A gross hyperdynamic state. Okay, so that is what you see. So again, most patients with aortic regurgitation will not have features of pulmonary hypertension or right heart failure, but unlike aortic stenosis, maybe 10 to 15% of aortic regurgitation do go on to develop the problem of heart failure. Okay, so the apical impulse will be hyperdynamic. That is the first thing you should tell, because large dilatation of the left ventricle. So apical impulse will be seen in more than one intercostal space, something like how it is seen in the video, but it will be more displaced than what you saw in the video. So a hyperdynamic apex, which is displaced down and out. Okay, and left parasternal pulsations are not common, but you may see pulsations in the right second space. In the right second space, that is the aortic region, because large volume of blood goes from the root of the aorta to the proximal part of the aortic arch. Therefore, large volume of blood goes there. So inspection finding will be what I told in the apex. Other than that, you may have a pulsation in the right second space. You may have a pulsatile carotid. You may have all the other peripheral signs. Okay, so that is part of the peripheral signs. So now we'll go back to the peripheral signs. What are the common peripheral signs? What are the common peripheral signs? Have you seen, any of you seen any peripheral signs of AR in your 4th, 5th or 6th, 7th semester? Now Smriti has told that cardiac output. See, the end diastolic volume goes up, isn't it? End diastolic volume goes up. So the end diastolic volume exceeds like 160. And therefore the stroke volume what I mean is the volume which crosses the aortic valve. That's what I mean by stroke volume. A part of the stroke volume, of course, comes back into the left ventricle. But the end diastolic volume is very, very huge. Quincke sign. Now, my question is that have you seen these things? Have you seen these things? No. Okay. Fine. Okay. Okay, I'll ask you one simple question. Which is the only peripheral sign which is enough to diagnose aortic regurgitation? only there are many peripheral signs which is discussed in aortic regurgitation, but actually it's enough if you know only one peripheral signs properly. One peripheral sign properly. It's not Hill sign. Hill sign it's its own problem. I'll come back to Hill sign. Drop sign, water hammer pulse, collapsing pulse. Okay. See, collapsing pulse is the only thing you need to understand. Collapsing pulse is the only pulse you need to understand for aortic regurgitation. There is a problem with the Hill sign. I'll come back to that. I will have another slide which shows the common signs. I'll elaborate when we go into that. So, inspectory finding, is it clear? Before I go to the palpation, is the inspectory finding clear? Okay. So now going into palpation. So what will be the palpatory finding in aortic regurgitation? Palpatory finding in aortic regurgitation. Palpatory finding in aortic regurgitation. So Roshni has mentioned position of apical impulse confirm, aortic area, diastolic thrill may be felt, A2 may be felt. Okay. Any other answers? Harini has mentioned apical impulse displays down and out, hyperdynamic apex, thrill felt in aortic area radiating to the carotid. Smriti, thrill in the left fifth space, sixth intercostal space, epigastric region. Chandani has mentioned trachea, midline, apical impulse felt over more than one intercostal space, hyperdynamic. Okay. Anyway, I'll go to the answer. See, one thing you will appreciate is, see, when you palpate the hyperdynamic apex, hyperdynamic, we told heaving is a sustained lift. So when you palpate for a okay, so when you palpate the hyperdynamic impulse, what you will feel is a very ill sustained heave. In heaving, I told it will be a sustained heave. In hyperdynamic, it will be a ill sustained heave, and it will be felt in more than one intercostal space. That you will get. Okay. Now, thrill in aortic regurgitation is very rare. Thrill in aortic regurgitation is very rare. It may occur only in a very severe aortic regurgitation because, as you know, the volume of blood which comes back through the valve, isn't it? So that will produce a murmur which is of relatively low intensity. Actually, early diastolic murmur of aortic regurgitation is the toughest murmur to hear. For an undergraduate, early diastolic murmur, it will be like a soft blowing of the air. Okay, very, very soft. It's not a very harsh thing at all. So it's very difficult to identify. Therefore, thrill is not usually felt. Okay. So palpation other than the heaving, hyperdynamic apical impulse, you may not feel anything much. Okay. And even if A2 is loud, it may not be palpable. So only thing you may be getting in palpation is only the hyperdynamic apex and not anything else. Is it clear? No palpable sounds, no palpable thrill. It's quite rare because the amount of blood which comes back is relatively less. Therefore, you don't get any palpatory findings much. Okay. Now, can you try the Auscultatory finding. Auscultatory finding, aortic regurgitation. Auscultatory finding in aortic regurgitation. Take time, give a complete description of the auscultatory finding in aortic regurgitation. So Roshni has given the answer as mitral area S1 and S2 is normal. Diastolic flow murmur may be heard. Tricuspid H2 S2 heard. Pulmonary area normal S2. Normal S1 in aorta. Okay. Early diastolic murmur. See, when you tell the auscultatory finding in pulmonary and aortic area, I think I already told that we just mention A2 and P2. Don't mention as S2. Because what you hear in the pulmonary location is P2. What you hear in the aortic location is A2. Okay. Okay. Arrhenius mentioned S1 soft, S2, S3 if there is heavy systolic failure. Okay. Anyway, I'll go ahead with the most characteristic findings in. See, mainly in the auscultation part, what you will hear may not be very much dramatic. Okay. So what will be more dramatic in aortic regurgitation is this: pulse will be high volume, wide pulse pressure will be there. You may see some of the peripheral signs of aortic regurgitation, a hyperdynamic apex. But when you auscultate the heart, actually in aortic regurgitation, already I told you, the murmur of aortic regurgitation is difficult to pick up. And A2 is usually normal or increased, but mostly it is normal. Isolated aortic regurgitation, mostly A2 is normal or slightly low. So you may not be able to appreciate a dramatic auscultatory finding. So only thing you may be able to appreciate will be the early diastolic murmur. So why I am telling this is because as an undergraduate, let's assume that you are examining a patient who has a high volume pulse and collapsing pulse is also there, and the apical impulse is hyperdynamic, but you are not getting the early diastolic murmur, but still you can tell it is a probable aortic regurgitation. Okay. So even if you don't hear the aortic regurgitation murmur, you can still tell it is probably a aortic regurgitation. Only difference is that you won't tell it's an aortic regurgitation, you will tell it's a probable aortic regurgitation, which is well accepted. Okay. So now I'll go to the discussion of the findings in aortic regurgitation. Okay. So now, as I told you, blood leaking back occurs a lot. So these are the findings you will get. Pulse is high volume and it is collapsing. Okay. So can anybody tell me the mechanism? Let me try to finish the mechanism of collapsing pulse here. Though I need some diagrams, I think you need to understand the concept of collapsing pulse here itself. Can you tell the mechanism of collapsing pulse? Can anybody try the mechanism of collapsing pulse? Sanjana has mentioned aortic runoff. What do you mean by aortic runoff? Okay. So anyway, since due to I think the time we are running out, so I'll just explain the mechanism. Okay. See, any high output states, forget about aortic regurgitation. It can be anemia, it can be hyperthyroidism, it can be pregnancy, any high output state. The first thing which occurs is increase in the stroke volume. Do you agree? So first thing in high output state is the heart starts to pump more amount of blood. It tries to increase the stroke volume or the net cardiac output. That's what it will try. Now, what will be the peripheral resistance to begin with? How will the vessels react when large amount of blood comes into the aorta? How will the blood vessels react when large amount of blood comes into the aorta? Initially, how will it react? I'm talking about the peripheral resistance. Initially, to begin with. Okay, I'll give a very typical example. When you blow a balloon, new balloon, when you blow it, is there any difference in the resistance you appreciate in the beginning and the resistance you appear at a later point of time? Initially, the resistance will be more. Later on, it becomes less. Okay, so this is what happens in aortic regurgitation. In the initial phase of aortic regurgitation or anemia or hyperthyroidism, there will be increase in the peripheral resistance. But over a period of time, what will happen? There will be decrease in the peripheral resistance. So when the peripheral resistance is decreased, the vessels will not resist the flow. Therefore, the vessels will distend more and accommodate more amount of blood. Okay. So there will be increase in the upstroke of the pulse. Because I have not taken the pulse, I'll just try to explain this as best as possible. So the pulse will have a rapid upstroke. Okay, and the downstroke depends on again the peripheral resistance only. Since the peripheral resistance is not there, the downstroke will be very steep. It won't fall slowly, but it will fall down very quickly. I'll just give an example. When you lift a hand like this, there is large amount of stroke volume which is coming towards the radial artery, from the brachial artery to the radial artery. Now, the resistance of the brachial artery will be very less. So when I lift my hand, what happens? It will come up forcibly and it will also come back. That is called the peripheral runoff. Peripheral runoff is actually in the opposite direction. It is runoff from the radial artery to the brachial artery. Usually that does not happen. Usually the blood is only ejected in the forward direction. But here, because of the poor peripheral resistance, when you lift your hand, what will happen? There will be a peripheral movement of the blood. So that is why when I lift it, I feel the impulse and then a impulse which goes down. So a rapid upstroke followed by rapid downstroke. So both the rapid upstroke and the rapid downstroke can be explained by the decrease in the peripheral resistance. Okay. Now, in addition, in aortic regurgitation, when you lift the right hand, the blood also runs back into the left ventricle. So since the blood runs back into the left ventricle, that also aggravates the downward movement of the pulse waveform. Are you able to understand why there is a rapid upstroke and rapid downstroke in collapsing pulse? I'll try to explain with the diagram at a later point of time, but this is a general idea. Okay. So the upstroke, so don't think that the downstroke is due to the run back into the left ventricle. It is due to the peripheral runoff, because when I lift my hand, the blood column in the radial moves backward. Blood column in the brachial moves backward because there is no resistance of the peripheral vessel. So the decrease in the peripheral resistance is the main mechanism for both the upstroke and the downstroke. Additional mechanism for downstroke is the leak back into the left ventricle that occurs only in aortic regurgitation and not in anemia or thyrotoxicosis. Okay. So high volume pulse, let's not go into the Bispherians pulse now. Wide spiral pulse pressure, JVP is rarely elevated, I've already told you. Apical impulse is shifted down and out. Pulsation may be seen in the first or sometimes in the second aortic region. Apical impulse will be hyperdynamic. You may hear a diastolic thrill. I told you it's really difficult to appreciate. Now this is about the peripheral signs in AR. See, try to understand only the collapsing pulse. Okay. A Hill sign is supposed to be a better indicator, but the problem is measuring BP at the thigh is very difficult. Even if you have adequate size, it's very difficult to auscultate the popliteal artery. Okay, so it is really difficult to appreciate Hill sign. Practically, cuff size and barriers in auscultating the popliteal artery makes assessment of Hill sign is very difficult. Dancing carotid is very common, and locomotor brachial artery pulsation is also very common. Quincke sign, the capillary sign which occurs on the nail bed is common. Pistol shot, when you keep your steth in the femoral artery because of the increase in the stroke volume, you will hear a shot like tuck, 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 like that you will hear. That is called pistol shot femoral. And Durozius sign. So when you obstruct it, you will be able to hear a systolic murmur when the bell of the stethoscope is actually compressed proximally. Okay, don't bother much about the Durozius signs and the peripheral sign. Regarding the murmur, it will be the early diastolic murmur. So short early diastolic murmur is very difficult for an undergraduate to appreciate. Even a long early diastolic murmur is very much difficult to appreciate. But remember, it will radiate towards the left lower sternal edge. Okay, so for example, when you hear the early diastolic murmur here, and you hear the early diastolic left second space, it will come down in the left lower sternal margin. So the better place to auscultate for early diastolic murmur is the root of the aorta, which corresponds to the left third intercostal space, which is also called the second aortic area. Okay, so I've given you the severity thing, which is same, which is given in the books, but go by the pulse volume and go by the presence of other peripheral signs. So Chandani has raised one question: if collapsing pulse occurs in all high volume state, why is it most important sign in AR? See, I am telling in most important in AR because if you have a patient who has a high volume pulse and you also have a patient with wide pulse pressure, but the patient is not having any anemia, not having any features of other high output states, so that explains. That's what I am trying to tell. Collapsing pulse is not specific. It's not specific, but when you take the pulse, volume, the auscultatory findings all put together, collapsing pulse is more than enough to diagnose aortic regurgitation. Chandran, is it clear? Okay. Now I have two more questions from Ashwin. Better see, why I am telling second aortic area is that the early diastolic murmur turbulence is more at the root of the aorta. The root of the aorta corresponds to the second aortic area. You understand? The first aortic area is actually in the proximal part of the aortic arch, whereas the second aortic area corresponds to the root of the aorta. So the root of the aorta is a better place to auscultate for. Why is it decrescent? There is no pressure at all. It is a free flowing murmur. Aorta, from the aorta to the left ventricle it flows. So it is a low pressure murmur. Low pressure murmur will be decrescent. It is one of the murmur which flows at a very, very low pressure. So that is why it's decrescent and also difficult to appreciate. I think I have addressed the doubts. Okay, any doubts you have in aortic regurgitation? Any doubts in aortic regurgitation? Okay, so with this I think we can close today's class. So what we can Thursday, what we can do is that I have not discussed a dominant lesion, mitral stenosis, mitral regurgitation, and some scenarios. So what we can do is that on Thursday we'll take up the bronchectasis, which I didn't discuss, the signs of bronchectasis, so that we can take up, and then I'll give you some real scenarios in respiratory system and some real scenarios in cardiovascular system. Okay, so I'll stop the recording now. So on Thursday we'll discuss bronchectasis and real scenarios in respiratory system and real scenarios in cardiovascular system. So I'm stopping the recording now.